Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Dunigan.
We have come back with another Unproduced Scripts. You know, going back in time with something of like what could have been back in the day. Back in 1998, that is. This is what we could have been looking forward to, you know, and as things go, things change and so on, but it's always fun to pull these old scripts out and say, hey, what's this all about? And we're going with Resident Evil, the George A. Romero script. Also, there's also the other guy, Peter Grunwald, on there, which I really want to assume that this is the guy that he probably played the game with, because what George A. Romero did is he just sat down and he had like his assistant just sit there and play through the game, and he just took notes as they went through the games or whatever. I'm guessing Resident Evil 1 and 2 at this point. Though there's references here to like Resident Evil 1.5, so he was also getting some insider stuff too.
Well, the thing that's weird about this is sometimes, you know, we come into some of these movies, like, you know, we cut into like Mario Brothers, the movie, we cut into Justice League, Mortal, and then a lot of times there's like, oh, I wonder what this was going on here, I wonder what's going on there, and then there's some more of kind of like this mystery that kind of unfolds after the years. But this one, it's pretty cut and dry, and I didn't know this, but apparently this script has been online since probably like the early 2000s, apparently. So it's just kind of interesting to know, like, this is one that just, like, it didn't get that far, and it just sounds so weird. The idea that the guy who inspired Resident Evil, essentially, was turned down not just by Hollywood producers, which is kind of predictable, because, you know, sometimes Hollywood producers have a thing like, we know what we're doing, like, do you? And then it was also turned down by someone at Capcom, and he said it just wasn't good. I'm like, did you see the ones that fucking came out?
Yeah, like I'm sorry, like, because here's the thing, like, you know, at the end of the day, the Paul W.S. Anderson, or no, W.S. Anderson, not Paul W. Anderson, right?
I'm sorry, you totally blanked out for a minute. Skype was doing Skype, but Paul, I think I just got the tail end of that. Paul W.S. Anderson. I don't know if he wrote. I don't know if he directed the first one. I think he did.
Yeah, no, he did. I was just making sure it wasn't Paul W. Anderson, right? That's the artsy.
Oh wait, Paul Thomas Anderson is the artsy guy.
That's right, Paul Thomas Anderson. I don't know why I was getting that confused, but yeah, Paul W.S. Anderson. You know, because he wrote and directed the first one, and then the second, or 2 and 3 he just wrote, and then 4, 5, and 6 he writes and directs. That's kind of how that one goes, or whatever there is. 4, 5, maybe there's 6 actually.
Now, it's kind of hard to keep track after a while. Is this the one with the underground city and there's submarines and someone's doing backflips? You know?
Yeah.
But
what I was going to say on those ones, though, is like those kind of movies where it's like, you know, I like them for what they are, as if they're completely different. But I just, like, I think it's one of those things, once you kind of accept them as like, okay, it's just a completely different take, fine. You know what I mean? And then they're kind of fun movies by that point. Where it's like, I look at this script and I go, dude, this script was like fucking perfect. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know who thought there's like, this is fucking stupid. It had to have been somebody who's not in charge of Resident Evil. That's all I have to say.
Sorry, Skype was being Skype again. So here's the thing about this. You say the script was perfect. I really don't know my Resident Evil lore as much as you. The 3 people I think I know who know Resident Evil probably the most, or probably 4 people. Like you, and then friends of ours who've been on the podcast as well as in your comic, Cisco, RJ, and Josh. And I feel like that there are things I just kind of know the bare bones and bare basics of Resident Evil. The only one I've played the whole way through and beat, I'm one of those people who just played Resident Evil 4. I'm like, this is all I know for the GameCube. But then there's other ones. I hear you guys talk about it so much that I feel like I can piece things together. And then there's also, I played co-op with you for a little while, not the whole way through. I played co-op with you on 6 and a little bit of 7. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm not by any means a Resident Evil like guru. I don't know about as much as I know about like Batman or anything like that. But at the same time, I think I know enough more than I know characters' names and certain relations they have. Yeah,
you know, that's one of those ones like this script here. You can kind of go into it, I think, and kind of hopefully be able to get the gist of what's going on just from, it's that sort of thing that like, I know for you it's almost like, you know, you haven't really played through them all like ridiculous like some other people did, like a religion or something, but it's that kind of thing where like you've heard people talk about it so much you almost felt like you were there anyways. It's like I wasn't there, but I heard the story so many times.
I know there's apparently a part, I remember kids, before I even met, kids talking about it in like school about some part in Resident Evil 1 when you're walking down a hallway and like I guess a liquor just jumps down off like a air conditioner right on top of you or something like that, and it would always get someone.
Well,
that could be any moment, I'm sure, but I remember kids at school would always talk about just this one part. It's like, oh, I'll keep an eye out for that if I ever play the game.
Yeah, it's like, I guess probably if I'm thinking it's Resident Evil 2 at the very first time the liquor's shown, you know, that's probably the closest thing to it, to that kind of scene. But really what makes this script interesting is this script's not like 100% accurate to like Resident Evil. It's kind of like it does still like its own things, but none of those things it does really like throws me off. I'm like, you know what, that's kind of cool, that's different, I kind of like that. But at the end of the day, it's just like you see like how many nods and actual references there is to the game, how many actual characters they get. I mean, how many movies did it take of the actual Resident Evil to finally get to like this many characters? Shit, there's some of these characters I don't think have ever been in any of them. So it's just like one of those ones, like, you get this script that's pretty much, you know, like, I mean, it's that kind where, like, it's the perfect example of taking, like, okay, you could just do the video game as this. That's how I always said. If you want to make the perfect Resident Evil one, just literally take Resident Evil the remake for GameCube, you make that exact movie, you make that into a movie, like, pretty much line for line, beat for beat, boom, you'll have the most perfect horror movie ever made. And some people are always out there like, whoa, but you gotta change it so it's gotta be different. I'm like, no. When you go to a different, you know, medium, it's okay, because the whole point of like making it for a movie, yeah, it's like the people that played the game, like, yeah, they already know what's going on, but they don't really care. They're here to watch the movie anyways. That's not really even the target audience. That's like a small percentage. It's like when you go to make a movie, you're making it for like mom and pop in Oklahoma and the rest of the world and so on, you know. So they've never seen that Resident Evil story. I feel like that Resident Evil story is already so like such a masterpiece. That very first one, just let that thing go, you know. And it's like you look at this script and it's like, dude, this script would have covered you for all that. And then it just does some really neat things throughout it that you're like, oh, that's a cool way to go about it. There's some extra stuff in there.
I noticed there's some, but we'll go through it in order as we usually do. But I noticed there are some characters in the games, in the script, that don't make it out alive. Then I noticed there are other characters, they populate with other characters who I don't believe are in the game. Just like, okay, this way we can have people die gruesome and horribly, like you would want to see in a horror movie, but it's none of our main cast.
Yeah, I like how they sort of do that in this too. It's just like, oh, okay, because it's kind of that thing where there's like, you know, there's enough characters between, you know, Stars, Bravo, and Alpha Team that you could have pretty much filled up with everybody in there. But at the same time, it's like, you know what, that's not like the biggest deal. Like, that's like one of those ones that's like, sure, let's go with it. But you ready to go through the script? Let's just do it that way.
Well, I just wanted to say this last part about how, like, my take on the script mostly, and this is not me kicking it down, I don't think the script writing and the dialogue is so amazing or great. Not that it's even bad. There's some, like, cringy lines here and there, but it was a first draft. I think it's just very straightforward. Like, this is a mission movie. We're moving forward. You're only meant to get attached to maybe a few of these characters, because most of these characters are going to die by the end. So, and I think that some people, when I'm just kind of looking into how people reacted to this, and like how I was more looking for like history on the thing. A lot of people kicked the script in the dick by saying how cheesy and it was just kind of like an 80s action movie. I'm like, that's kind of sort of what Resident Evil kind of already was, just with a lot more horror elements to it. So I think that this thing, so when somebody from Capcom says it wasn't good, I'm like, this thing seems way more accurate and way more loyal than any of the other movies that got made.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's one of those weird ones. I want to say, like, I hope it had Shinji Mikami, the guy who created Resident Evil and so on, and those guys there didn't have anything to do with that saying. I want to say I hope it's just some Capcom guy that doesn't know anything about the games he's making and so on, because it is one of those ones you look at this. I mean, like, yeah, there's some corny lines and things like that in it. But here's what it comes across, though. This would have felt like what I would think of as a,
Jill sandwich, like the original.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, yeah, corny lines. Like, look at that original one there. But it's that kind of thing where it's like, I think for like a horror movie, though, like all these lines would have fit, and it would have been kind of fun that way, too. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Yeah, but I guess like maybe having the 80s thing, especially in 1998, would have seemed like, yeah, at that time period, it might have seemed like, well, this is 10 years too old of a movie. You know, the way that it's written. I mean, granted, it is written by a guy who's, you know, probably in his 60s by this point.
Well, I know who is this movie kind of goes on. I'll say this. I'm not sure if he said this in any interviews, but I really got a Aliens meets Night of the Living Dead from this.
Well, yeah. It's totally, because, you know, it's like, it's got that
you got the badass team that's finally put against something where they're like, what the fuck? And I don't know, whenever there's like a badass Mexican chick who, spoilers, doesn't make it, I feel like maybe it was something else, but I feel like that started with Aliens.
Yeah, no, that chick that's in there kind of started there. But let's go sort the script so we don't go too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
But, so right off the bat, boom, it just starts off with Marcus, which they kind of use John Marcus. So, like, from Resident Evil 1, there's John in there. / also, Marcus is, you remember in Resident Evil 0? I know once again you didn't play it, but you know how all these games, you've seen enough of this, like, footage throughout time.
I heard that title a couple of times.
You know, you remember, like, how they got the one with all the leeches? Like, that guy? Mm-hmm. That guy is Marcus, technically. So is he a playable character, or is he just in the story? He's the boss of, like,
he's the final boss of it?
Of 0.
Okay.
Now, granted, it's a little bit different here because, you know, it's a different time period, but still, just the idea, it's kind of there. That's, you know, they're using the Marcus name, whatever. They got the research lab and so on. Boom, starts off. Things are going wrong there. We get one of those scenes where it's like, oh, here's all these bigwigs in here and so on. And then, you know, as Marcus is trying to run out, we don't really know who he is yet as far as the movie's going. But there's just chaos going. Boom, cuts to, like, title, Resident Evil. You know something's about to happen. I think it almost feels like it would have, like, proto-shaky camera going on right here or something. Like, they're like, oh, you know, we're shooting it from our little Sony Handycam in the background here. And then, oh, God, what is that?
And then what ends up happening from there is just we cut over to Chris Redfield, who's a Native American in this.
Yeah, well, I love how he's just like, he's a Native American. He's just like out, there's just like eagles out there, and he's just like throwing fucking fish to them and so on.
And he's marking them down, like trying to remember like which ones are which. Like it's like, oh, Goliath is here today. Right on. Oh, they're migrating. Oh, this one is Percival, and not Percival, but I remember he had different
like
names.
Cleopatra, yeah.
Cleopatra, yeah. And at some point, he throws a piece of fish out there, and he hears like a weird noise, and one of the birds comes back flying like crazy, like, I'm going the fuck out of here! Like, what the fuck? That was weird. Okay, whatever. And then he heads back to Jill's apartment where she is laying there, and that has that very, like I said earlier, some of the dialogue feels a little kind of like just bland, but at the same time, first draft, and I think something like this, you can pull off this kind of dialogue with good acting and good direction. I think, because, you know, there are movies that I've seen that don't have the best dialogue, but it's pulled off just with everything else being good. So they have this whole thing, like, he gets home, he's like, you're still here? It's like, it's my apartment. And he's just like, they get this whole, like, kind of like soft kind of lovers conversation, and just being like, you're beautiful. No, you're beautiful. One of those kind of things. Like, beauty's on the inside, too. Like, one of those, you know.
Well, the interesting thing, too, is it's like they make Jill and Chris a couple, because that doesn't ever happen, like, in the video game. But I think that's kind of like, it's that kind of interesting thing, because you think about, once again, you're taking a guy. He's just kind of thrown, like, hey, take a look at this Resident Evil 1 and 2, and that's, like, all he's really got. And he's kind of putting together his own story on top of it, you know what I mean? He doesn't have, like, the years of, like, all the books and the years of all the extra games and so on. So I think it's kind of interesting, because it's like, that seems about right. I mean, I always feel like Chris and Jill should be together, and sadly enough, as video games have gone on, Chris and Jill are never together ever again, unless it's, like, a DLC, like, special for Resident Evil 5.
Well, I just want to say I thought it was cool, and this isn't me trying to be all PC or anything, I thought it was cool that Chris was Native American, because you never see a Native American main character in movies that often.
Well, I was going to say this too. You know what? Because you forget about this, but during the 90s, that was that real, like, hardcore Native American coming back period, because they had all those, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's all those, like...
A couple of Westerns, a couple of modern Westerns that came out.
Well, like, beyond Westerns, like... they made regular Native American movies. It's like,
are we talking like no. Not Dancing with Wolves, but
because I feel like every single time there's like a Native American movie, it's always like a Western or something like that. Like one thing I always says, like, I wish there was more movies that were like pre-Western, like Native American movies. The only thing I can really think that's kind of close to it is Apocalypto. You know what I mean? Like something that takes place before anybody showed up. I mean, I guess Apocalypto, somebody does show up at the very end, but
Well, every so often, like a lot of time, not every, like more later westerns, they're like, yeah, we're kind of sorry about that. So they started making them like allies, or like they had the one buddy that was with them, the one like guy who just like he was born on the land, but later became friends with Clint Eastwood or whoever. So. But no, like, are you talking like more movies set in modern day, kind of based around Native American characters?
Yeah, because they started making movies where it was like just a Native American drama. It just had to be like, hey, it's a drama about us living on the reservation, and we're just doing regular people things. Like, you know what I mean? Because I think that's the thing is Native Americans have always been kind of pigeonholed into like Western side characters. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like
sidekicks or Tonto or whatever.
Yeah, but I remember in the 90s, because I remember as a kid, there was this one time I got like a catalog in the mail. And it was just all Native American stuff. That's all it was. God forbid. I don't know why it got to me, but they're like, well, he's probably going to have long hair one of these days. He knows what's up.
He might have a dream catcher.
Yeah, I did as a kid because we made him a Boy Scouts. So I remember this catalog, and it had like, of course you could buy blankets, you could buy, posters, you could buy dream catchers, you could buy jewelry and all, the regular kind of stuff. But it had a back section, and it had all these like VHSs and like early DVDs. It might have been like 98 or something like that. And it was just all these just straight Native American movies. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like how you see everybody else sort of has their kind of movies. There's Mexican movies, there's black movies, there's all those kind of ones like that. But it's like there used to be a genre. It's like, and I feel like I haven't seen it in a long time because I always think of this catalog.
Is it kind of like FUBU, for us, by us, but Native Americans?
Yeah, pretty much. That's what this thing was. And it's that kind of thing that like there used to be that time period where they're like, oh, let's throw a Native American character in and be like this. And you know what I really think brings us down though? It's the second that like Casinos came out. That kind of like the Native American characters.
You're good.
Yeah, it's like they literally disappeared.
You don't need to know more.
Like, you almost never see, like, at least in California, I'll say this. It could be different in other states, but in California, it's like the second that they just allowed them to all have casinos, it was just like the sympathy went away. Nobody cared to see them in, like, movies or anything like that anymore. I mean, I'm not saying you don't see them here and there, but for the most part, it was just kind of gone. You stop seeing people, like, having, like, Native American, like, merchandise and so on. Because that used to be for the longest time. That was what everybody did is they, made cool Native American art and they sold it to, like, Eagles fans. You know what I mean? That was that was a market for a very long time. I remember because, like, a couple Native American guys I know, they say it's like, yeah, the second... You know what I mean? After a while, after the 90s, like, white man doesn't want to buy anything from the Native Americans anymore. It's just like that business. I mean,
how many dream catchers can you own? How many more of these like little beaded bracelets can you put on?
Yeah, so it's just like it just kind of went away. Like I also like
after a while, you see kind of the same pattern in the different blankets.
Yeah, like
he bought one TP. I'm surprised he bought one, but he's no way he's gonna throw down coin for a second TP. He maybe used it once.
Yeah. But, so I think it's kind of an interesting one just to make Chris, because it's like, I'll say this, because Chris is one of those kind of characters that, like, he almost is made, I think, because, there's that time period where they made video games and they kind of tried to make the main character not too, like, he's just enough that you can kind of relate to him, but he doesn't have too much personality that makes him, like, too strong, so you can get a more broader range.
You can kind of put more, you can insert more of your own personality in him.
Yeah, like those type of, I mean, that's how I always feel Link's supposed to be kind of like, that's why he doesn't really talk, so you could kind of fit more of yourself into him. Mm-hmm. Well, Chris, in a sense, I feel is kind of like that. So I feel like, yeah, make him an Native American. I'm like, why not? That sounds cool. And then I just love how they just kind of make him just more like, he's just like, in this story, he's like man of the earth. And so
well, they also do this thing where he's not because
he's not stars.
If I'm wrong. Like he's caught. He's not. Yeah, he's not. He's not special forces or anything. He's just a farmer, just a good old man's man, living out on the land, friends with eagles, hanging out. And then, like, he's angry when he finds out later, spoilers, when he later finds out Jill is a STARS agent. He's like, the only woman I ever loved turned out to be a white devil, The same people who took my land from me. He doesn't go there. But I'm like, he gets angry when he finds out that she's, like, military. He's just like, she's military. Like, well, I mean, maybe it comes from the same place. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's just like... Yeah, because they just have this kind of relationship and so on. It just says, like, he says he's part Mohawk. Like, that's what I am, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then, like, yeah, of course, like, Jill sneaks out or whatever after they fall asleep and so on. And
she has, like, in her closet, she has, like, a special, like, keypad. So people who don't know the character are like, what the fuck? She's a secret agent?
Yeah, exactly. And then she puts the beret on. It sounds like she's putting, like, the exact outfit she has in Resident Evil 1 with, like, I don't know. It doesn't say the color, but I'm assuming it's going to look just like that.
Has basically the secret vault of all her weapons and uniforms and stuff like that. Then goes out to get picked up by a Hummer. Like, all right, this isn't a drill. This is the real deal. And apparently, she's been in some action, but the people she's with are a little newer.
Well, see, the other thing I thought's kind of cool is I like how they make Jill. She's almost like the top, just about the top up there. So she pretty much has like Chris's position, I guess you would say, in the game. And I think that's kind of neat in itself.
Mm-hmm. And then we cut to a guy named Rake, who is...
I just gotta say, there's a crusty old farmhand guy, and what is his name is Rake. It's like he was born to work on the farm. Be like, son, your name is Rake, because you'll be taking care of the old Redfield house.
That's all you'll ever do.
You'll do, and you make sure you take care of it. You keep the horses fed, you keep the chickens cooped, and you continue raking. Never stop raking, Rake.
My name is William. It's Rake now, because that's all you're good for. Aside from wrangling in all these horses, but Rake is easier to remember than Horse Wrangler.
And I love because, like, is this the part, like, when it comes up where, like, Chris runs over, he's like, Rake, what happened?
Not just yet.
Okay.
We see him hanging out for a little while, being like, oh, I got this beautiful horse in. Oh, yeah. You know, all of a sudden, something comes in, like, I want to say he's there, like, I don't know what happens. He's there just bringing in some horses that they just got, and then next thing you know, he gets attacked, and it's through the vision of this thing.
Yeah, there's something coming in. They got kind of like that Evil Dead perspective probably coming at him, like flying in and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But then
they have like a conversation with Jill and her guys going in, like, is this a drill? No, this is the real thing. We'll be good. Don't worry.
And then we also get kind of shots of Wesker, but they don't let you know it's Wesker yet. They just call him the man with the tattoo. For some reason, Wesker has a tattoo in this. I'm not too sure what that's all about.
Did you actually hear? There's one little thing that I heard that who knows how much of this is true. He was actually. I'm having trouble. It's not who I could see it, but at the same time, given the way to describe him, I don't see Chris as this. They're talking about Kurt Russell playing Chris.
I could tell.
And then
that'd be kind of cool. I mean that. I feel like, okay, I'll say this. Like, let's say 1998, which let's assume this movie's not made till let's just say the movie's made in 2000, since it'll be like when the other one came out. I feel like Kurt Russell's a little bit old at that point for Chris, because Chris
same thing here.
I'll say this: if he played Wesker, I think that would be cool. I feel that would be almost the way to go about it.
Yeah, because they were talking about making this in 96 or 97, so he may have been a little too old for Wesker to be calling him kid. But and then the guy playing Wesker, the guy they had in mind, I forget this actor's name, but he's not always the main villain, but he's always kind of a villain he's a character actor into a lot of stuff. He plays like, if you need a goofy, crazy Russian guy and like in a what's his name? In a Jerry Bruckheimer or Michael Bay movie, he's that guy. He's the guy who's like, I don't know this Star Wars. Or in Bad Boys 2, he was the Russian mobster. Like, in my country, I see this all the time. Or he was Satan in Constantine.
Yep, the fantastic actor.
He would have been playing Wesker.
See, that would have kind of made sense, because that time period, that guy would have been about that age, you know.
Mm-hmm. So moving forward, you know, you get some calls from Wesker, like, you don't know it's him yet, but he's always described as being like a lean badass with like wearing like a shirt that shows off his biceps, and you see like a badass like skull tattoo or something like that, and he's always wearing sunglasses, and he's always calm and collective.
Exactly. See, they're just getting it right off the bat, like these characters. And then it's like, I mean, like, look at, like, we're like almost like 10 pages in, and they're already like at the mansion. You know what I mean? There's none of this like dilly-dallying in some movies where like you'll spend 40 minutes like not going anywhere. Like this one just fucking goes. The pacing's just like continuous and just gets there.
And then what they end up doing is first off, Chris saw Jill get into a Hummer dressed up in military gear.
Hey, where's she going? Hey, hey!
I thought we were cuddling. What
He's
the
just
fuck?
like outside the window, like, caw, caw! Like the eagles come flying in.
Follow her!
I really wish that he just had more of these like animal abilities that just kind of came in for no reason. Like, it almost reminds me like that thing where
he
like
just puts his hands. He just puts his hands together. He's like, oh! All of a sudden, the elk comes tramping out. He just gets on the elk's back. He says, after the Hummer.
It's just like one of those George A. Romero's like, he's like, you know what? I always like Native American mythology. I just kind of want to incorporate some of that. Resident Evil. I thought that was the time and place for it.
So moving forward, he's just kind of trailing them from a distance for a while, and he loses Jill, but he kind of goes by his old. This is where we don't really know it's the Redfield farm just yet, because he cuts by his old farm, and there Rake is all fucked up. He says, "There is something, I don't know what," and he's just like, "You took good care of my farm, but you did a really good job breaking those leaves. That's why we named you that." Like, yeah, my name was William. I'm not gonna remember that, but you're dead now.
That's not going on the cross I'll put for you if I get back in time.
They charge by the letter, so.
Yeah, and I'm gonna carve myself, so I'm the one charging myself, so. But yeah, this poor Rake's out here. But they got this thing too where it's like these, like, the horses have been, like, attacked, and they're, like, you know, torn up and everything like that, and Chris even has to go grab his, like, Winchester and put one of the horses down and so on. So you get a lot of cool, like, animal kind of, like, you know, something's been attacking these animals out here and so on.
And then we go, then we're kind of following this new team that consists of, I'm going to be 100% honest. Most of this team, I couldn't remember who was who. Because most of them, it was like, all right, it's obvious most of these people are going to die by the end. But here's the ones that stand out. You got Wesker, you got Billy, not Billy.
Barry.
Is it Billy, or is it
Barry? I like how they made Barry too.
Barry's African American.
Well, yeah, they made Barry. They made him like almost like the classic like '90s like black guy. Was like, it's the big buff happy black guy. Hey, everybody, I'm here to help out. He almost
made him like Mike. He would have been played by Michael Clark Duncan probably.
Yeah, exactly. That's almost how it kind of felt. It almost reminded me like take Barrett from Final Fantasy VII, but make him like positive and optimistic. Like that's how it sort of felt like in the description when they said. And that's another one too, where it's like I feel like you know what, that kind of works. Like that's a perfect example. Like, yeah, you know, if Barry wants to be black, that's fine. He doesn't have a family in this because at first I'm like, I wonder if he's gonna have the family element that's like from Resident Evil. It's like, nope, that's not there. He's just
was he like a big badass that was a family man?
Yeah, he was the family man in Resident Evil, and pretty much the whole thing is that Wesker, nobody knew this to the end. This is only in the game, but it's not in this story, so I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything yet. But pretty much Wesker was holding on to Barry's, wife and daughter. So that's kind of why Barry had to do some shady things. He's not a bad guy, but I can't let my family go, Jill.
Was Barry a playable character?
No, he's never. The only one, God, he might be a playable character, I think, in Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy, but not in any of the other ones. Oh, no, take that back. He is in Revelations 2. That was the cool part of it. They finally made Barry a playable character.
Yeah, so and him and Wesker are just good old war buddies in this. They've been in the shit together for a long time. So I was like, well, immediately I'm like, well, I know Wesker's a bad guy. And I know I've heard you guys talk about Barry all the time, and I didn't know if he was black or white until I started doing more research on just this movie. I'm like, oh, they changed Barry. Okay, whatever. And then they had Rebecca. And then aside from Rebecca, they had like 3 or 4 other people whose names I cannot remember. Maybe you can tell me if they're in the game or not. And then there is one chick named Rosie, who I think was possibly somewhat the inspiration for the Michelle Rodriguez character for the Paul W.S. Anderson one, or at least maybe a nod to Alien, because it seems like a lot that was a very popular thing in sci-fi horror action movies, is to have like the badass Mexican chick.
Well, in this one, it's definitely a nod to Alien, but you could tell that they took that character and turned her into the Michelle Rodriguez character for, the regular Resident Evil movie that came out. Mm-hmm. And then, this is the other thing, because then there's the other team that goes in. This is kind of the interesting way that they kind of switched around from, like, the game, is because they technically have Jill's team go in, and she's almost like the Bravo. And, because, like, in the Resident Evil, the game, Bravo goes in first, and that one has Rebecca's in Bravo, and she's kind of like the one main surviving member. And then, without the exact list, but there's some of the other characters are all in there, and that's who Alpha, which is Wesker, Chris, Jill, and Barry are going in to save, is everybody of Bravo. So in this one, it's just Jill, and then there's brand new characters like Williams, Russo, Desmond, and these people all like don't make it very long. I think. I can't remember. One of them might be the helicopter. No, the helicopter pilot's different. Or whatever, but there's like
he had like a weird name where that was a code name, like Laganus or LaGuardia, something like that. So when the thing is, they're going on. They're going. They're like, we lost radio contact with Bravo, and then they come across. But this is the point where where Chris is just going dun dun dun, like tiptoeing behind trees, peeking behind him, I'm like just whatever. I know that women shot better than this, but I'm just gonna imagine some real Elmer Fudd style shit, just him with his Winchester just tippy-toeing from tree to tree as stars is where's Jill? Where's the rest of Bravo? And they're looking around. They just get attacked by a bunch of zombie dogs. Something's wrong with these dogs. They're they specify them to being German Shepherds as well as Rottweilers and I think Pinschers. And then maybe one of them dies or something, but in the process they just take out these dogs. And then they say, we found Jill's beret, has Valentine, and Wesker throws it down, and that's where Chris is like, not my woman! So once they leave, he grabs that, throws it in his bag, and continues to follow them.
So yeah, he's stalking them as, Wesker's going inside. At first, it seems like they're going in there to search for Bravo, but Wesker's got other plans, of course, and so on. And then because that even kind of starts off that right there. That's the opening scene of Resident Evil. Is Alpha lands, and then there's the dogs attack him and so on. They got to run inside the mansion. So boom, they get inside the mansion there now, and then you start just kind of. There's mentions everything throughout in here of kind of that makes you feel okay, this is kind of how the mansion looked like in the game and so on. But instead, it almost goes through the way they kind of do it. Instead of doing it kind of I guess you would say I feel if you were going to do a Resident Evil movie as exact, it would be one of those movies where there wouldn't be tons of action in it, but when it had action, it'd be really badass. But the rest of it would be almost kind of puzzle solving and mystery-ish kind of type movie, where this one's more just almost the roller coaster ride of all this shit coming to life inside this mansion, but which I think almost works at the same time for a movie. You know what I mean? I would never complain about that if you were watching it, because I bet you it sounds pretty sweet.
Well, it feels, I could see, I think it would work for another movie based on a video game, but it does go by this video game thing of okay, each area of the mansion is a different level, and each level presents a different type of challenge. So, and each one was okay, this one we're dealing with more zombies, this one presents the lickers, this one presents the sharks, this one presents the snake, this one presents the plant, and then it goes on, and so then we learn more about the characters as it goes on. So, as this goes on right here, Chris is locked out, and he's trying to get into there, and there's one guy that was on watch who, he bumps into Chris, and they point guns who are you? Who the hell are you? And that guy gets nommed on by a zombie. It's the first time yes, it is actually a zombie.
Yeah, they have that part there. And then it's all of a sudden, I think it's because Wesker left Rebecca, and then I think just two of the anybody characters. Just the fill-in for a death scene character. And, of course, it seems like Rebecca comes around the corner afterwards and be hey, who the hell is this guy? What happened here? You know what I mean? Hey, and she starts radioing in where Chris is oh, fuck, gotta get out of here.
Exit, stage left.
I just feel I just picture Turok music playing as he's running down the hallway. Dun 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 dun. Oh, there is a part too that I think is fucking hilarious in this thing, where it's Wesker and Barry are walking down the halls, and Wesker pulls out this device, and I love it's just written, and it's still an old person. It's Wesker pulls out something that looks like a Game Boy, and then I this keeps referring it to a Game Boy. So it's Wesker's just going down the hall, fucking starts playing some Tetris as he's going down. Barry's shit, what's that? It's you see the map on there? Wesker's just not even answering, it just keeps going. So puts it back in his pocket. And I feel there's almost a way that they reference it. It's he pulls out a Game Boy and he puts the Game Boy back in its pocket.
Have a tie-in, maybe we can get some deals. You guys got a deal with a Nintendo game coming out, right? For the Game Boy? Yeah. Let's lead into that. This could be product placement.
Yeah, it almost felt like it was perfectly set for that Game Boy Color game that never came out, sadly.
Well, they said in this, they said a couple times a Game Boy-like device, but then they would constantly refer to it as the Game Boy. So I'm wondering if they just would do the John Carter thing from John Connor thing from Terminator 2, where he just has an Atari system that he's using to hack ATM. So it just has Atari blatantly written on it.
Oh yeah, the computer that he pulls out.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons why they like, all right, yeah, you can use us. We'll help throw down some money for this movie, and yeah, just show our logo a few times, but have him badmouth Nintendo for a second. He has to do that.
Yeah, it has to be like, all the kids are into Nintendo. I remember as a kid, like, I took offense to that like line there. I was like, okay, John Connor, that's the only thing, though. I mean, granted,
you crossed the line, bitch.
I mean, I get where he's coming from. It all makes sense. He gets to play with real guns, so I mean, I guess the Nintendo does seem like a step down, but still, there's a Terminator game for Nintendo. I mean, I know it's not happening in your world, but.
And you have an Atari. In your hand. So maybe it's just brand loyalty. Maybe he's just like, no, I stick with the classics. But because then I guess it would have been new. But anyway, so. From there, like, Wesker's team shortly comes in contact with Jill, and she points a gun at Wesker, saying, we lost 3 people. How the fuck? What the fuck? You know, she's just kind of losing her shit right there. Pointing at him like, you did not tell us what we signed up for.
Yeah, she's just like, hey, you got to give us the deals here. What's going on? And this one, they make Wesker seem like, because it sounds like some of the things like Wesker always just seems like, he always seems kind of evil. Like, look at this guy. He knows too much what's going on. But this one, he's kind of like, yeah, you know what? Here, they told me some information. You know, I wasn't supposed to say it, but here, I'll share it with you guys. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Nothing big, just some extra CIA, FBI, you know, all that kind of stuff. Here, you know what? Here's what we're really here. Okay, there's this bioweapon down there, whatever, and we just gotta go stop it before there's an outbreak, you know. That's who Marcus is. Just make sure whatever the fuck you guys do, don't shoot Marcus. Whatever the fuck you do, don't shoot that guy. We need him back alive. So isn't it easier when I just explain it to you guys?
So it's just one of those things where it's like, all right, cool, let's get this going now. And then, like, once they have Chris, and from there, they have a gun. Isn't that what happens? They get a hold of Chris, and then he's just like, what are you doing here? Like, I was after my woman, but turns out she's the man. And then after that, they're like...
Somehow, some way, Chris gets, like, very, like, defensive. Like, he's like, I'm here to save my woman, but she's a metalhead. Like, she's like, it's like, is that what you... That must be what you call a, you know, special forces police officer, I guess?
Yeah, I guess.
Then
he's all going off... Go ahead.
It'd be like, she said she was into the Native American music, and then I caught her at a Metallica concert.
That lying bitch! And then going from there...
What do you hear? I'm just here to tell her what a man has to do to a woman to make it right. Like, oh, you went a long way, Sarah. He's like, well, and I got into this thing, too. He's like, well, I used to come to this mansion and play as a boy. This was our mansion that we claimed. You know, and they start going on like, well, how was this thing built? It's like, well, in Prohibition era, let me tell you the history on this here, because
Take a seat, everybody.
I'm tour guide Chris. You're like, you know, God, he's like, God, I guess I'm a stereotypical Native American. I'm giving you a tour of this area.
I can just totally see. I'm like saying she's not a metalhead. He's like, I'm going to want that Jim Croce tape deck back.
You don't deserve this. And he's like, well, let me tell you the history of the mansion here. In this version of it, in this parallel universe of the game, you know, it's like Prohibition era. They built this huge house. They said, let's fucking party. The guys was into it. It's been derelict ever since. As kids, we used to go out here and, like, you know, play in the sand and run through the mansion and, like, jump on snakes. You know, regular kid stuff. Look, I graffitied my name on the wall here. I misspelled it, too.
It was the K. I was trying to be edgy.
Yeah. It was the 80s, you know. It was different then. You know, I was trying to make a name for myself.
And then, so then from there, she's like, yeah, he was part of my cover. So it's just like, oh, shit. So one of those things like, oh, you're gonna be shitty about it? I'm gonna be shitty about it. So then they're just kind of just moving their way through it. And from there... He's like, how'd you actually get inside? He's like, I got through the same way the dogs that threw their pins in the back. And then he's like, oh, that was smart. Good thinking, you know? So they're just saying, okay, look, so we just got to go through this mansion and we got to find Marcus was his name, right? Yeah, Marcus. You got to find Marcus and get him out of here because he has the vaccine that's going to cure everything.
Yeah, and also, too, we forgot to mention, but, like, before, like, when Chris is pretty much running to his farm way earlier on in the story, there's kind of like this whole evacuation in progress, and all these like secret agents like land and be like, "Yo, get the fuck out of here!" Like the plane crashed down the road, shit, I don't know what was in it, but it could be dangerous. We want to get everybody out there. It's like, someone's like, what plane? If there was a plane that crashed, I'm pretty sure I would have saw it. You know, I sit out on this porch every goddamn fucking day. It's like, shut the fuck up, old man. Get the hell out of here. No, I see it. There's no plane here. It's a goddamn cover-up. I see how you guys do it. Same thing that happened to my cousin. Oh, get this old man out of here. You know, and so there's that kind of thing. So they're like, pretty much have evacuated Raccoon City. Now they're going to like the mansion or whatever. And now we cut to where we are now. And pretty much from this point on too, there's just
basically nonstop.
We like badass action scenes. We get sweet zombie scenes. Plant 42 kind of comes out at first, and like there's some vines and things that kind of attack people. Almost remind me like it would have been a scene from like Jumanji, like '96.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then like they start even showing all kinds of other stuff too. It's like beyond just that, they got I'm like on they got Plant 42, and then like I know that comes on later on. I thought there was another boss battle in between. Oh, the sharks. They have that part too. Because they literally fall through the floor at some point, and then they're like in the underground area. Because it's kind of weird how it goes. Like it almost just feels like if you took Resident Evil like the mansion and you just had it where like people are like blasting through walls and getting thrown through like the floor and ending up like down water chutes and going through like the ventilation shafts and so on, Metal Gear Solid style.
Mm-hmm.
But they even fall down. There's like sharks, and they make it out there's like a bunch of sharks. Like not even just like a couple of them like in the game. There's like 6 sharks or something down there. And, of course, one of them bites fucking oh god, what's his name?
Well, somebody just it sucks because they just walk by it and they cut their leg on his mouth.
Yeah. Well, it's what's his name? Fucking Brad Vickers is the one who gets. He doesn't let on to it later on, but that Brad Chickenheart Vickers, the guy who flies away like a little bitch in the game, like, once he drops you guys off because he's scared, because he's in a fucking helicopter.
Oh, so they actually make him part of the team in this movie?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the cool thing, though, is, like, there's Forrest is in this one. He's actually from the game. Brad is from this one. And then there's one other one that they have in there, too.
Do Brad and Forrest die in the game?
Sullivan, and then, yeah,
okay, so this is the whole team, but they all just basically die.
Yeah, the only ones that aren't the team is the Rebecca lady, or the
Rosie Rodriguez.
Yeah, Rosie Rodriguez, not Rebecca. I didn't mean Rosie Rodriguez, and then the ones that were with Jill at the very beginning, like those ones aren't in it either. But everybody else is from.
Okay, so everybody else is. I just recognize the other names because those are characters I heard you guys talking about, and they reoccur every so often. So I was like, okay, so these other guys are in the game, but they are guys who just die in the game, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so they're all just the other characters that do die at the game, but like it's just cool that they're all in here because these are the kind of characters that you would not expect to really be almost in a movie. It's like that's like the hard cuts I feel like it has in there, where it's like, oh shit, you didn't just put 1 or 2 characters, you put like almost all of them in here,
Yeah.
But
going through this from here, it just kind of becomes like, I don't want to seem like I'm bringing it down because I'm not. But it seems just from here, it just goes from they kind of stumble into one room after another, and through that, they just face off against different creatures, and we might get a little bit more exposition about a certain character between that, or this character dies in the process. At some point, they get split up and then come back together, and leads up to the very end.
Yeah, there's those kind of things that, like, in a movie, I feel like it'd be a lot more clearer. But, like, half the time when they get split up, I'm like, who the hell's with who again? You know what I mean? And it's just, I think that sometimes comes with, like, scripts. Scripts sometimes aren't, like, as, like, I mean, it probably mentioned it once, but, like, then you're kind of like, okay, now it's been like 10 pages. I've already forgotten kind of who's with who. But yeah, they have.
Well, I want to say after going through the mansion for a little while, they come across like one of the underground labs, and and Chris makes a joke like, "Well, I knew this part when it was actually a laundry room," And they say they see like an infected monkey drink out of water, and they see what they think is a guy at a desk, typing away like, "Oh shit, it's a scientist! Yeah, fuck yeah!" And they see is like, "Oh, it's a zombie just slamming his hands, doing whatever," and then he starts walking at him, and then they get more zombie attacks.
I also have to say, I think it's so awesome that there's the monkey zombie in this one, too, because that's another thing that didn't appear till, like, Resident Evil 0. Actually, there's a gorilla thing in Resident Evil 1.5, technically, so there's that in, like, the proto game, but, so
was the Resident Evil monkey, was that just something you saw in the background, or was it something that attacked you?
That's not attacks you in Resident Evil 0.
Oh, okay. So that they actually have that in there.
So yeah, and that's before that. This was like way before that game even came out. So that's what's kind of just neat. I mean, granted, it's a monkey zombie. I guess that's not too hard to think of having in something. Everybody who sees like one animal is like, well, guess we would be awesome if having a monkey zombie.
Well, no, that's just one of those things that's just kind of interesting because they have the whole they have that whole part where they're trying to figure out how to totally drew a blank on what the fuck I was saying. They're trying to figure out what it is that's going on, and you see the test subject like, oh, there's a fucking monkey zombie? That's different.
Yeah, and they just kind of go through, and it shows like even like all kinds of other like, you know, animals and so on that they've kind of been like working on and whatnot. And then as we said, we just kind of, it goes through like these kind of scenes, which like I feel like when you talk about it, it's not nearly as exciting as if like there was an actual movie. You'd be like, dude, this would be a fucking badass, you know, fight scene and so on. But then like they come up even to like, maybe it's like not yet. Maybe they get to Plant 42 yet.
Well, they have like a little bit of foreshadowing. So you see these random vines, and they like swipe away at the vines for climb. When they actually get closer, that's where they come across the vines. And I want to say it gets split into a couple groups. And by that point, I want to say that group is Chris, Guys Who Die, and Rebecca. I want to say that's who's in that particular group at that point.
That's true. Well, I remember that there is that part too where like I think that like Wesker's like following his map or something like on his like Game Boy as referred to, and then he gets like pissed off. He's like, my fucking key card doesn't work, and everybody's looking like, oh, it's gonna be okay, whatever. He just like takes the Game Boy and like throws it against the wall. It's like, fuck, what happened? Oh, I lost again. I lost it, Ninja Gaiden on Game Boy. Fucking thing pissed me off. Could be the last boss on there. Should have been working on this whole time we've been here. Like, people have been dying. He's like, well, I had important things to do. I mean, I'm sorry we lost some people, but
priorities. I was in the last boss.
Yeah,
and you know,
I thought you'd all understand.
This is before they have a save feature. You get it, right?
Yeah. Shit.
Visker would have understood. Let me say that, or Vickers would have understood.
Yeah, I mean, he may have been a chicken heart and a little bitch, but he would have got that though. He would have got that. Funny, just Wesker just sits out as fucking like, shit, why the fuck did I just break my Game Boy? What the fuck's wrong with me? Like, just has one of those moments, you know, like when you do something stupid in life, and it felt good for like 1 second, and then like afterwards you're like, dude, what the fuck did you just do? You know what I mean? Like, you just broke it. Now you have nothing. Just sits there, just like, sits on the corner like, dude, well, come on, Wesker, we gotta finish the fuck it. It's not worth it anymore. We broke my Game Boy. Well, you get another one. It wouldn't be the same.
You got a 6-figure government salary. I don't give a shit.
Fuck, I've had that one since 89. You know,
there's nostalgia to it.
Yeah, you know,
it's like a member of the family just died, and I killed him.
Yeah, just because of one fucking boss. One boss is what made me kill it.
I'm just not ready to move on. So, but then going on, I want to say at some point because they basically face off. Someone gets killed by Plant 42, and then someone's like, I'm gonna fucking kill this plant. Just a mad rage, just starts cutting through vines, trying to find more of the plant to kill. And that's where the snake just...
Well, that's what's awesome. It's
he thinks he hit more vines.
Well, they actually killed the plant, like, almost like the way in the game, too. They poison it or whatnot, and it shrivels up and then, like, dies. And then one guy's like, fuck it! I'm just gonna start hacking away for no reason! And then the yawn fucking, like, pops out at some point. I'm like, that's kind of, like... That, to me, sounds like such a badass way. Like, now I picture, like, Resident Evil 1. Like, what if you defeated Plant 42 and you're like, oh, it's fucking over. And then all of a sudden, the fucking yawn comes out. And then you gotta fight that right then and there. Like, that'd be so badass.
Well, I was surprised to see that in there. Because there's some things like, okay, we're probably gonna see some zombies. Maybe, like, 1 or 2, like, kind of monsters. And then we're gonna probably get something like Nemesis or some kind of boss at the end from the game. I was like, okay, handful of zombies, dogs, and a liquor, and then a boss. That's what I thought. Like, no, this thing piled on the bosses.
Yeah, dude, it got, like, mostly everything in here. I mean, like... Here's the thing. It had more stuff than probably any of those other Resident Evil movies have ever had. You know, it's just like, it's so amazing, like, how dialed this is. And the way I always say about this, too, is this is no different. This is literally, like, just take, like, our parents. Like, take your dad, for example. If he had to sit down and fucking watch you play Resident Evil and write a script from it, because that's, like, the age range that George A. Romero is. You know what I mean? He's, like, that's how I like to, like, think about this. It's like, this is a guy who's not even, like, he's, like, multiple generations away from what this game's for, you know? And the fact that he can get it so dialed in, I mean, granted, there's the other guy writing with him, which I think so, like his boy prodigy that plays the game. I'm assuming. I don't know who, but you know.
Well, I feel like it's one of those
good
things.
Good old Peter there. Peter there to help out. Peter, I need you to play this game for me.
You're like, I don't like video games. Well, you're younger. And
you got youth.
Don't worry, I'll give you a co-writer's credit in this. So yeah, at some point, and so that's what Chris and Rebecca are dealing with. At some point, Barry, Wesker, I think Rodriguez, and some other people are kind of in their own thing, and Barry and Jill. Barry and Jill are having a conversation, and he's like, "So you've been in the shit with Wesker?" Like, "Oh yeah, I'd do anything for him. He'd do anything for me." I believe they have one of those kind of conversations, and that's when for a while, when they're crawling through vents, they heard some
"You ever seen
howling.
Fox and the Hound?" He's like, "Well, that's like me and Wesker."
Well, in the book, they kill each other, and it's a really sad ending. Like, oh well, fuck.
Oh shit! I didn't read that book. I saw the Disney movie and I left halfway through. It seems all happy.
I get it. It all pans out, right?
Yeah. Oh shit! They come back together as adults and they fucking hate each other and have to kill each other. Shit.
Oh, in the book, they actually die. Yeah. So like the foxes like patch or whatever gets bombed and like with fire, a bunch of like fox cubs die. The old man just has Alzheimer's and doesn't know what's going on, dies alone. Like, it's just one of those things. Like Disney's like, this could work as a kids movie. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, well, that just reminds me of like that kind of story that was like, that has to be like one of those stories about like, this is about like war times, you know what I mean? Like just because you and your fucking neighbor, can be a good friend's kids, next thing you know, it's almost like a Civil War type thing. Like one's fucking shit starts up and then you're both on the different side. Like you got to kill each other. It's just how it is.
It's got to be like something that came out like in either probably maybe something during the Cold War. I could see it being something like that.
I think it's an older story than that.
Maybe World War II? I don't know.
I would just say way older than that still. I'd say like, I almost want to say 1800s.
Is that when it takes place, or at least the Disney version? Doesn't the Disney version take place in the 1800s? Or like I thought it took place in the 50s or something.
Maybe it does take place in the 50s. I always thought it took place like in the 20s or 30s, but it's been a while.
It's been a minute, yeah. But anyway, I could totally see it being one of those stories and like, oh no, it's about animals. What? Yeah, don't worry about it. Just watch the fucking movie.
Yeah, but we start getting kind of more kind of different things there, because even like Wesker like is talking to like Chris or whatever, and he questions him. He's like, you look like you trained well. Military? It's like, nope, exempted. I'm Native American. Oh, draft dodger, eh? I don't pay taxes either.
I just hang out with falcons.
Oh, okay, yeah, enough of that.
I just chill with falcons, ride elk.
Yeah, just do the usual Native American thing, in America. What do you do?
Run a ranch.
Work for the government, huh?
How's that panning out for you?
You know what? I'm pissed because you fucking killed my farm. I love that fucking farm. It was my daddy's farm. Old Rake there, he's been there for generations. He's fucking dead now because of you, Wesker. I hope you know that.
Feel shame. All the shame, Wesker.
And then I think it's at some point around here, like Wesker, just to get everybody like fucking in line.
This is where they come across the liquor. They're having one of those conversations.
Well, they don't have liquor howling. In this one.
What was it then? There was like not a liquor then. What was it? There was one of the ones that crawl on the wall and they make something up. They described it as like a combination of like a baboon and a lizard with insect qualities. I thought it was a liquor.
So it's a hunter is what it is in this, which is generally the main villains, or like the main like strong villains, I should say, from Resident Evil 1. They appear in other Resident Evils as well too. But it sounds like in this script that they combined it with chimeras, which is you've seen those before. Okay, in Resident Evil 4, the creatures that go invisible when you're in like that underground like kind of waterway.
Yeah, okay, they kind of combined it with that.
So they combined it with that. It sounds like, just by the description on here, because the insect parts remind me like sort of like that, and those are both in Resident Evil 1. So I could see where that comes from. So that sounds kind of cool, because also the way they go about, like, when they have to battle these hunters, they start coming in, they're swinging in with their claws on the walls and so on. And as they start unloading on them, they realize they can't shoot them in the head anymore, which I think kind of makes sense, because the whole point's like, we learned this, like, hey, just shoot the fucking dog in the head, shoot the zombie in the head, shoot the horse in the head, shoot your friend in the head, it's okay. If it's a zombie, don't trust them. So now we get to the point, too, where, like, Wesker starts to explain how he's going to keep everybody in line. And he's like, okay, see this earpiece I got here? This is tied to my heartbeat. If I go down, there's bombs underneath the building here. They'll blow up. You guys are all fucked then. So you better listen to what I say, because I'm Wesker. And if anybody fucking, like, decides that they got a Game Boy on them, better hand it over right now. I mean, I know it won't be the same, but I'll fucking take anything you got.
I got a Game Gear.
Does it fucking... Takes it, just throws it against the wall? No. No. Looks at the fucking audience. No. Just like, oh god, this he must be.
He just points. He like zooms in, like it's the end of Reefer Madness. Except for your kids and your kids.
I also like too because it's like at some point there's like they literally got a like this feels like Night of the Living Dead. I'm like I knew that had to get worked in there, but that you know what? That's one of those few lines where I feel like it works kind of like. Yeah, like that's one of those lines I feel like nowadays almost kind of comes across corny, but I feel like when it is sort of like. Really, here's the thing. If a zombie thing did happen, what's the first thing you're thinking it's going to feel like? Feels like Night of the Living Dead, right? I mean, like, what else is going to be your go-to beyond that? Maybe Resident Evil by this point, but...
At the same time, I think it kind of just explains to people who are like, wait, what? Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I definitely think that's
At this point, we're past it at this point, but at one point in time, I think there may have been that, you know?
Yeah, it's like you sort of need to explain that to somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so,
They do have this part that I want to say, like, I remember this was kind of weird. It felt like a helicopter picks him up for a moment, but then takes him to, like, another section of the lab. Like, that part kind of threw me off. Because I'm like, well, that throws off my, like, you know, map thinking of how, like, Resident Evil all looks and so on. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, at some point, they're like, when they end up saying, like, hey, Wesker, what the fuck is all this? There's all this crazy shit going on. Plants are trying to eat us. There's a giant snake. This and that. There's zombies here. There's fucking zombies. Fuck you. I didn't sign up for this. I'm leaving. He says, no, you're not. You need the car key for that. Like, I don't need a card key. The helicopter has rockets. And then, like, Wesker's like, all right, well, here's the game we're playing then. And that's where he drops the thing. Like, hey, if my heartbeat stops or this thing gets loose, we're all fucking dead. So that's where that comes in. And by this point, there's been once or twice where Jill saved Chris, and Chris saved Jill, so they're slowly starting to come back to each other. At one point during another zombie raid, Chris has this moment where he sees a zombie. This is like one of, I guess, one of the more slower personal moments where he sees like a zombie, and the zombie's not super decayed, but he sees it's a guy that had a name tag on it. It says,
and he has like overalls on or something like that. He's like, that looked like
a working man.
He looked like he's like, oh god. He also has like a Bruce Springsteen moment, like, I can't kill this man. Like, he worked down here at the factory. It wasn't his decision. You know, he just had to feed his wife and kids. Like, you know, who am I to take this man's life? And Jill just kind of comes up and just shoots this thing in the head like, Chris, get the fuck over it.
Well, yeah, because he has the gun drawn on him, and he's I think he yells out the guy's name, see if the guy responds, and he's getting closer and closer, and that's where Jill shoots the guy. He's like, if he wasn't a zombie, I would have got a beer with that man.
Yeah.
He was in overalls.
He was in overalls. That's a guy you could trust, you know what I mean? He ain't trying to steal from anybody.
So...
I like how it's just like, you know, all the scientists and so on didn't cross his mind when he was shooting those guys. It wasn't until the guy with the overalls showed up, be like, oh god, that's a real person down here.
He was just shooting the scientists, like, I always want to kill me some college kids.
Exactly. Scientists, these are the people that took my land away from my people 200 years ago. But that man with the overalls, well, he just needed a job just like anybody else did. You know what I mean? He wasn't taking land from anybody. He was just looking for work.
He's like this. You just see he's like a scientist. He's like, I bet you got ties to Monsanto.
Not any longer. Boom! I also like how he's running around with a Winchester. I think that there's something about that's just kind of neat, because I'm like, I don't think you've ever had like a Winchester type rifle or anything like that in a Resident Evil game before.
I thought in like, number 4, didn't you have like an old school rifle or anything?
You had like a sniper rifle, but I don't think... I just feel like he's got like a repeater, like a fucking Western kind of gun. You know what I mean? Mm. I'm not too sure. It's exactly it, but that's why I picture him running around like Red Dead style, just like blasting these zombies, just like cocking it each time. Maybe he could be like fucking Terminator 2 style, where he spin cocks it. That'd be even more badass.
There's even that part when like Wesker is like, all right guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to split up our ammo evenly, and then move forward from there. And then I want to say, like, Chris is like, I'm good with my own rifle. I don't need none of that ammo. And like, Wesker a few times...
That white man ammo.
She's like, that Winchester probably killed a lot of your ancestors.
Every time I take a life, it brings one of them to peace.
I didn't hear you. The sound went out.
I said, every time I take a life, it brings them back. It brings one of my ancestors back to peace.
I just hear every time I shoot one down.
In the dead of winter, when I see its spirit come out, I know that it's going back to the earth. You're like, okay, well, I guess that means 4 clips for all of us then.
Awesome, Chris. Great going.
Great.
Well, I'll say
Jill,
this,
you had to pick this guy right here. There's nobody else in Raccoon City. Jill's like, whoa. You don't want to see the other people of Raccoon City. Shit. Everybody that wears overalls or a flannel here. You know what I mean? Hey, Chris like, hey, that's a man you can trust. A guy in overalls or a guy in a flannel. And especially a guy...
And they're not in a grunge band.
Yeah, we never even heard of that over here. We're still listening to 70s music. Kiss came in, last week.
We might get a Foreigner cassette in.
Yeah, So yeah, just saying. Raccoon City,
No need to change with the times. We'll get to it eventually. Why rush?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
That's what our grandpa would say.
Yeah. There we go.
As he was stringing up, I thought they were bed sheets. I don't know.
I like how as this thing kind of goes and they kind of go deeper into the lab, they actually have the proto version of the laser room appears here. So, in Resident Evil, the actual movie or whatever, that scene that's kind of, that's almost like the biggest takeaway from that movie. Because I always feel like, every kind of big action movie out there always has like generally that one scene that no matter what, you'll probably remember that till the day you till the day you die. And the laser scene in Resident Evil, the original movie, like that's always that one that I don't think after someone sees that, I don't think anybody ever forgets that part. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Where it's like it cuts the one lady's head off, and then like there's the one guy who tries to survive, gets cut in half, and there's that one
guy who tries to
dude
Super Mario it.
He's a total badass, and there's really nothing. Like, you're like, okay, this guy, and then the laser room's like, oh, we're doing that shit, and it just turns into a whole wall. Like, oh, fuck you.
Well, it's kind of interesting, too, is because in that movie, too, it's like, that's literally where it kills, like, half the cast members right then and there at that one section, which is kind of ballsy in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how, like, in this one, the laser kind of appears, and I like how they have to, like, sort of dodge it and so on, and I love how they throw just, like, the token zombie in there. It's like, dude, what the fuck is this? How has this zombie been surviving this laser room this whole time? But just to,
they acknowledge that? I don't remember.
Yeah, they do mention it. They go like, how is it still there? But it kind of adds that extra kind of challenge to it because the zombie will accidentally shuffle over and set the thing off. And it like kills a couple of the guys right then and there too. And then they have to get down. They get like the ground. They're like, there's only one way out. And they like unscrew it. They're like, good thing I got my like Swiss Army knife. Fucking like take the screws out and then like dive down the hole and whatnot. But
I think is that where they end up in the shark tank or they already get there?
No, that was way early on.
At some point Chris falls in the shark tank and Jill unloads on the tank, and then it fills up the room, but it's like only knee height, but enough for the sharks to swim. So they're all on desks and whatnot, shooting at the sharks, trying to avoid them.
Mm-hmm. Just like, which just sounds like such a badass scene in itself. I think that's the thing too. Is like, are you just saying about this movie? Is this would have been one of those movies, especially for like in like like late '90s, early 2000s, where it's like you always have those movies where it's like like Deep Blue Sea, it's got sharks in it, like Lake Placid, it's got a gator in it and something like that. But this would have been the movie that had like a bunch of different stuff in one that I think the average person would never expected to see in a movie. You know what I mean? Just having like not only having like zombies, but having monsters and bioweapons, having like dogs and sharks and plants and all this kind of stuff. Like that would have been so cool in itself. And like even this day, I can't tell you of a movie that has that many different creatures like all in one film.
George A. Romero's like, you know what? I've done zombies. We could not only just do zombie dog. Fuck it, we'll do a zombie snake, zombie monkey, lizard thing that crawls on the ceiling. What? Yeah, we'll get there.
Well, because that's the thing too. That's like my favorite part about Resident Evil is not really like the zombies and all that stuff. It's like, and not the bioweapon kind of stuff. Is I like all like the animals that you fought, and that's only really in Resident Evil 1 because as the Resident Evil games kind of go on. I mean, like granted, there's always a couple animals here and there in each one, and so on. But they've kind of got farther and farther away from that in each one of the games, and like more and more like kind of weird bio, monsters looking kind of like Neon Genesis type stuff. And that's cool in itself, but it's like, I'd rather just see more like, animals like spiders and all that kind of stuff you could start bringing back and just like fighting those instead. Like, I don't know what it is. Something's just like real life stuff is almost like more interesting to me than like something that's like, as artsy created as possible,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, and that's why I just love those movies. This movie it brings all that stuff from Resident Evil 1 right into it.
So further from there, I want to say they come across this they come across another video where it's a Asian lady talking into a camera saying what they're trying to do, and somebody like Mark I want to say she's talking, but that's when she's talking and giving like, we got to get out of here, got to close this thing off, got to blow it up, and that's when Marcus pushes her out of the way, but then gets grabbed by something upward out of like, what the fuck was that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's like another one of those ones where you don't know. And then the cool thing too is like, we won't say it till we get there, but like that lady turns out to be like an amazing kind of like idea to throw into this, like something that's like, oh dude, that is so fucking cool. It's just by combining like two things together, that's when it comes full circle.
Well, I think we're about to get there, because don't they come across her roughly once they get out of the laser room with the different... From here, it's just kind of them tripping from one action scene to one action scene. That's, once again, not me bringing it down. That's me just, like, saying the script really just does... It's, like, kind of a consistent... I mean, whenever you say, like, a non-stop thrill ride, it just sounds like some cheesy shit they say to sell a movie, but really it does kind of just go from either cool action scene to scary horror scene.
Oh yeah, and that's like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just that kind of thing that like when you're talking about it, it's not like nearly as interesting as like when you're kind of like watching it. You know what I mean? Because like if you're watching, you're like, dude, this is so fucking sick.
I think the other thing why they probably backed out of making this movie is, as cool as this all sounds, I could see like, not defending it, but I could see some executive being like, look, this shit sounds expensive. I mean, I'm willing to throw down some money for it, but come the fuck on, really?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the movie sounded way too expensive at the end of the day. And I think what they wanted was a cheap, low-budget horror movie, and they're like, dude, the fuck, you add like way too many things in there. And I think there's always that kind of like executive producer thing, but like, okay, is it zombies or is it sharks? You can't have both. And shit, you got plants... Dog, you got the fucking, Noah's Ark in here of, like, animals.
You already had to explain dog to me. That's already kind of weird enough, because dogs don't do that.
Yeah, dog's man's best friend. Don't you dare tell me a dog gets infected.
Well, that's a move. The audience don't like seeing the dog get shot, so no, better than be no zombie dogs. And if there is, only zombie dogs, because you might get some shark enthusiasts not pissing them off, and you might get some vegans who get pissed off to see a plant. So
yeah. And then some vegans also might be pissed that, like, if you slice through a plant and a snake appears, so that just doesn't make any fucking sense, but... It sounds cool, the script, but, you know how vegans are when they see a snake.
I could assume, but...
But yeah, so, like, I'm thinking that kind of gets... Because I think that's kind of, like, what we kind of learned in a lot of these scripts that we've sort of read here on the podcast, is they sound so fucking amazing, and I know that's also going to be the first thing that comes up to it, be like, you know what, your script's good, but, we were not going to be able to afford it. Because I think that's always the main reason why, like, movies always are kind of pulled back. Unless you get something where, like, they're like, you know what, we have all the money in the world, fuck you. But that's, like, so few and far between at the end of the day. I think most movies, it's like, what do you like most about this? Because that's what you can do. The rest of it, you got to cut. Or simplify, at least.
Yeah, well, it's also one of those things where... I think it's something like this, because it's not like, oh my god, this is like Quentin Tarantino level writing or anything like that. It is just a really cool, straightforward action horror movie that knows what it is. So I think something like this, you have to kind of dazzle with spectacle and cool action. And maybe if that's, I mean, I'll be 100% honest. I don't remember the first movie all that well, the one that actually did come out. I don't think it looks super dirt cheap, but thinking in hindsight, did it really look that expensive? I mean, a lot of it was just in, like, white hallways with some zombie makeup and occasionally a CG monster, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is that movie came out the time period where slick movies were starting to be kind of made.
It's had a lot of Matrix influence in it.
Exactly. So once, like, pretty much post-Matrix era, like that, you could make that slick look, and that slick look is not nearly as expensive. It just makes it look like it's way more expensive. And I think that's kind of like how it sort of is, because I think, I'm not saying it's like a low budget movie, but it's like, middle of the road movie theater kind of film. It's not, and I don't think any of them have ever been like super high budget. They've all just been kind of like regular action budget or so on. Where this movie,
I think sometimes you could just make it look just make it look really bright. Because I was thinking, for how violent it was, they made it look very bright and vibrant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it's like they use some good color schemes in that one. Now, here's the thing. At the end of the day, like, I really do like that Resident Evil, like, the first one there. Like, don't get me wrong. For the movie we got, I still like it for what it is, as is. It's just, when I read this, it's just like, shit, this is what we could have got. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we could have got it, like, really close. I mean, even if, like whatever changes they do have, like, they don't really bother me. They almost kind of feel interesting. Like, oh, that's different, but sure, why not?
I just want to double check this, because you said, I hope it was no one too big in Capcom who said it, like, it's a Capcom producer, Yoshiki Okamoto. Do you know that name?
I don't, but that's not Shinji Mikami, so I guess it's okay.
So he's one of the fucks who didn't like the script.
Fucking guy. Who does he think he is?
I guess the thing with it just sounds so weird to me, because I guess my bigger problem, we'll just tangent on Paul W.S. Anderson for a second. The first one, it comes across as, because I remember everyone walking out of that movie thought, and I saw it later, but everyone walking out like, oh no, it's kind of interesting, because yeah, it doesn't have characters from the games, but it takes place at like the same time. It runs parallel with the video game. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And the second one comes out, and like, wait, no, it doesn't. Okay, and that one was kind of an action horror movie. It kind of resembled more stuff. Jill Valentine and Nemesis were in there, this and that. They still had to make Alice or whoever the main character. And then the second one ends on like, oh, she's under control of Umbrella. She might be the bad guy in the next one. And the third one starts up like, oh, that cover story that, because Raccoon City blowing up, they had a huge cover story about it, making up, like, oh no, that was just all fraud. That wasn't real. But it doesn't fucking matter, because the world ended. So why even bother at that plot point? And then on top of that, oh, that weird little mind control thing Alice has, she can just shake it off. Not a big deal. So it just seems like they're constantly rewriting shit as they're going along. It's like the same writer through this whole fucking thing,
Yeah, exactly. It does kind of have that sort of stuff in there. And I think the best way to look at those movies is just like, you take them as a fun ride. And if you take them as a fun ride, they're great. You know what I mean? You'll have a hell of a time every single time with all of them. But yeah, it's like, if you want it to be like the exact Resident Evil movie, they're definitely way off. And even other things too, it's like, because they also made that movie because at the time period, like, it had that spectacle thing where they made Raccoon City look like it was like New York City. And I always pictured Raccoon City being kind of like, not like a small town, but like a small city. You know what I mean? It maybe has a couple big buildings, but it's not really all that big, where that thing just looked like metropolis upon metropolis,
Mm-hmm. And I also feel like it's one of those things where I feel like I don't know. I've only seen the first three, but I like this one way more than either of those three.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely tell you this. I like this script more than any of all 5 or 6 of them or whatever there is,
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, 4 and 5 actually of the later movies, those movies actually like has that weird thing where they get even better at that point.
Sometimes it happens. They just realize what they're trying to do rather than changing. Because that was also the thing. Because for 3 movies, it was flipping genre. Not flipping genre. It was still sci-fi horror, but it was kind of changing what it was exactly. Like it was like, okay, this one, like I said, running parallel, and it's also kind of a lot of close, tight spaces. This one is kind of more of a setting of a traditional zombie movie. This one's quasi Mad Max.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But I guess going back to the George Romero script, I guess we're down in the lab area and so on like this, and now they finally run into that Asian woman that they saw on the TV, and it turns out to be Ada Wong. Like, that right there is just like, dude, you added in the combination of Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 kind of like sort of together. Because here's the thing, in Resident Evil 1, the only thing we know of Ada, if that's the only game you play, is that it mentions her name, that her and John, like, she's somehow connected to John, who's a scientist down there, John Marcus that's in this, and that's about it. And you type Ada and John's name into a computer to unlock the doors, because you have to solve kind of a puzzle to figure that out. That's about it. And that's all they ever tell you. We never see Ada in that game, nothing. And then, of course, in Resident Evil 2, Ada becomes, like, the secret agent spy who Leon chases after and just be like, Ada! No.
After she apparently falls off a cliff or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or, depending which endings you're going for. And then Resident Evil 4 and so on. And, Ada's just always been, like, Wesker's sort of, like, special agent, like, out of control. She does anything. She gets the job done. No questions asked. But what I think's cool about this one is they do Ada as a scientist, which in Resident Evil 1.5, which is the prototype to Resident Evil 2, that like at 80% done the game, Capcom's like, fuck it, scrap it, let's start over again. What? Oh, but we've been working on this for... Keep that Leon guy, but beyond that, start over. And in that version, Ada was a scientist, and she had the lab coat just how she is in this, so that to me is like a Resident Evil fan is like, dude, that is like ultimate. Like maybe like here's the thing: in 1998, you wouldn't have thought too much of it when you read that. You've been like, huh, that's an interesting way to go about that. But like kind of knowing all this like history and different variations of Resident Evil and so on, you hear that and you're like, dude.
Because that was one of those things I didn't know that, so I knew Ada was a badass secret agent because of Resident Evil 4. So getting to that part, I was kind of like. They do the Doslim thing from Street Fighter, like, oh, he's Indian, he could be the doctor.
Yeah. Well, what's your doctor? Indian? Well, I guess that's who Doslim is.
She's smart, she's Asian, she'll be the scientist.
No, I mean, like, so, like, it would feel like that if you didn't know that 1.5 thing, but, like, knowing that that's, like, oh, shit, that's the original Ada version right there. Because I'm also thinking at the same time, too, like, probably Capcom's being like, yo, here, George, here's, like, what we're working on. Here's, like, what the fucking characters are of number 2. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess number 2 would have been out right as this script kind of did. But you know what I mean? Like, they probably would have been handing him stuff for, like, the last year of, like, here's this, and that, and so on. So seeing the fact that, like, they have Ada in there, and they make her kind of a predominant character here at the very end. I mean, really just, there's like Team Woman here for a bit, because they literally did this, like, the man thing. Be like, okay, you women! There's, like, Rebecca, Ada, Jill, and Rosie Rodriguez or whatever. They're like, okay, women, you guys go on. Us men will stay here and kind of take care of it, Don't worry about that big monster in the jar over there. You know what? Us men can handle it.
Yeah, they have that whole kind of thing going on. Like, don't worry. Go be maternal somewhere. We're busy being man. We'll flex our problems away.
Yeah. Because I think by this point, it's like you got, like, as far as the dudes are left, you got Chris, you got Wesker, you got Barry. I can't really remember if Brad or any of these guys are still alive. No, because Brad comes back. I remember because, like, he literally comes back and bites somebody else, like, once they're down, like, the Tyrant lab. And once we're down here, they find Tyrant, he's in there, and you get to see him, and it's like, oh, man, this would have been fucking awesome to see in a movie and so on like that. And, of course, Wesker does the thing, again, where he's like, because, like, the game, Wesker would be like, fuck you all, I'm Wesker, and so on. This boy's like, dude, check this out, dude. We can make a fucking killing on this. Are you kidding me? Dude, who wants to be in? Rosie, you want to slot in this? You want to live on a fucking island? Come with me. We'll fucking take this guy in. We'll be set. Come on,
the only
Barry, just like when we were kids, what we always say we were going to do, sneak into a lab and steal some biotech, right? That's what I told you when I was 6 years old. I knew it. I was fucking there. Remember that? Remember that sandbox day?
God damn, that gypsy was telling the truth.
He's just kind of like, come on, Jill, what's not going to be the worst there? And then, of course, like, Chris comes in, he's like, no, you ruined my farm, fuck you! Kicks him in the balls. Actually, I don't know if he kicks the ball. He kicks somebody in the balls at some point. I was just tying that together, but he just, like, takes his fucking tomahawk out and just starts breaking computers. Like, dude, Chris, what are you fucking doing? This is money. He's like, my people don't need money. We have casinos.
Well, then he ends up, like, I want to say Jill walks up to him and says, like, sorry. Like, I'm sorry, Chris, but this is what I have to do. Then he points a gun. Then, like, I want to say, Wesker points a gun at Chris and says, like, if it wasn't for Jill here, I would have just shot you right now. That's why I'm only pointing at your gut. And then that's where he says, like, well, if she's with you, she clearly doesn't give a shit about me, which means I don't give a shit about her. One of those total, like, I could totally see Kurt Russell saying something like that. And then that's where Jill, I think she grabs the part of Wesker's, I think she knees him in the balls and grabs the little, like, comlink thing, and the helicopter support team is just like, I just got a reading, but it's unfinished or whatever. And then from there, just anarchy breaks out. And since at this point, Tyrant has been slowly starting to unice. And there's another lady that was with Ada.
Well, there's a couple
Trisha,
like other like scientists. There's just like extra scientists with Ada. Just so
one of them, and like the one lady gets her head grabbed and squeezed off by Tyrant. Like as his hand reaches through the ice, just grabs the nearest thing possible. Like, oh, that's something I can kill. You know.
Yeah. You know, well, that's why I felt like it's like, well, let's just throw in a couple other like, you know, characters just to get like murdered off and so on.
That would be funny if it took time. Chris smiled as he saw the person in white coats go down.
There's just like a slow shot just on his face with like this little smile coming on up.
Going back to Jim Croce, like I Got a Name starts to play slowly as like this headless corpse just flops down to the ground.
And then just cuts it like as this fadeaway. It's just like Chris is for some reason doesn't make any sense. He's just out on a river in a fucking canoe.
5 falcons.
Yeah, come flying by him and so on. Because that's kind of how it is. There's a moment there where, like, it almost felt like everybody was like, you know what? You know, Wesker's got a point. You know, this money would be great. And then Chris is like, no way. There's no way we could bring this biotech that I just learned about from this Ada lady. You know what? No, we're destroying it. It's gotta end here.
Mm-hmm. And that's where just this kind of Reservoir Dogs style scene starts for a second, but then that's where Tyrant gets out and starts grabbing people. And I want to say they once they pull the thing off Wesker, they realize, oh, we got 15 minutes to get out of here. Let's get the fuck out of here. And Barry's like, I'll hold him back or whatever. And they're trying to like blow the whole place up and get the fuck out of there and trying to keep Tyrant from leaving. But Wesker is still on his mission. And while everyone's trying to get away, so by this point, during when all that shit was going loose, and like one of the zombies, I think Brad got bit by a zombie and he ate one of the scientist people right there. That caused commotion, and then the Tyrant squeezed that one lady's head off, and then everyone else bolts while Barry and Wesker are still in there, and the door's kind of closing. And it kind of goes into detail, like there's just barely any room for Wesker, and much of it hinges on him putting this dude's shoe in place of the doors, just keeping it from closing the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like cutting his arm, like doing it, reaching for it.
He's got like his zip drive disc plugged in or whatever and like downloading the Tyrant files. He's like, dude, once I get these Tyrant files, we fucking living on a beach. Don't you fucking forget it, Barry. Don't you fucking forget it. Remember the sandbox.
And Barry seems to be kind of going halfway with it, kind of like, you know, I'm up for the money, but at the exact same time, you're being an asshole. So we'll see how this plays out. Yeah,
because Barry's kind of like he's like the on the fence character and so on. Like, you know, he could be full bad guy, but he could also go with Chris and so on. And he's almost like not too sure, which kind of makes sense. Like, I don't know. I'm just here to help out.
And they say the Tyrant had like a robotic arm. Did he have a robotic arm in the game?
Did it mention a robotic arm in this? I don't remember that part.
I thought it said like metal arm or metal, like, maybe I'm wrong. Because he had like spikes that shot out and skewered, well, we'll get to that. But he had like metal spikes that shot out and retracted.
That probably is just like his claw hand, and maybe it just they kind of changed it a little bit in this because he's in the game he's full on bioorganic type creature, you know, bioweapon. So I don't think you'd have anything but his claws, like nothing metal or anything like that put into him.
Okay. Well, they end up having this big showdown with Tyrant. And what ends up happening is they're just, you know, he eventually breaks out of the ice. And we're just going to focus on the 2C because it cuts back and forth. We have Barry getting grabbed by Tyrant, squeezed to death, and then thrown aside like garbage, it says in the script. And then...
Poor Barry just fucking gets brutally murdered, like whatever. Like, just, like, it felt like it was this photo, like, never mentions it at all in the entire thing, but the photo of, like, his wife and, like, daughter fucking just falls on the ground, and that's just it.
The monster just steps on it like in a pool of blood.
Just steps on it and just starts like smushing it into the floor.
It just really holds on it for a minute. You see its foot just slowly, really just rubbing it in there. Like, wow, that went on excessively long.
And then he goes to pull his foot up and the photo's stuck on there. And then he goes over
to like... tries to shake it off. Like, he likes wiping it on the side of the wall.
like he's got gum stuck on his foot. So he's like just scraping it off on like the computer or something.
Wesker has still not had enough time to leave.
He's still fucking downloaded onto a zip drive.
And then from there, he barely manages to get out of there. He like cuts up his arm really bad, just trying to reach through this door. And from once he gets the zip drive, and once he even gets the details, he gets out of there, and the door is closing. He's like, haha, fuck you, eat shit! And that's where he gets skewered by Tyrant. Like, I think it says something that, like, his, it shoots these blades out. I lost the spot, but I think he shoots the blades out. It skewers him, pulls him in, and then, like, his head gets severed coming through the door.
Yeah, just like one of those, like, get over here, and then just gets caught, like, in a total Mortal Kombat fatality.
Mm-hmm.
So you know for sure that he's probably not coming back, like, in the sequels. Like,
unless there's a clone of him somewhere.
Yeah,
but I guess that was also the time where they probably didn't know he was going to be... They didn't know he was going to be such a prevalent character of the series. I mean, what? It took until Resident Evil 6 for him to actually die?
5 is when they actually kill him. And he doesn't come back till Code Veronica, so there's still a couple Resident Evil games away. So, But at this point, that kind of makes sense. And I almost will say, like, this thing does give, like, a solid kind of ending, like, which is kind of nice. But we'll continue on. So it's like, yeah, there's that part there. And then it almost sounds like, because as everybody's sort of escaping, you know, you got you got the girls going, then you got Chris kind of coming up after. And then they have this, where it feels like they're almost climbing out of, like, an elevator shaft, kind of. Maybe not necessarily an elevator, like maybe a station. Because it seems like they keep going up these, like, levels and so on. There's all these zombies. And then they have the total, like... You know, Rosie Rodriguez comes out and she's like got like double guns at one point, but like, I'll hold them back. Just blasting away. You know, I mean, these fucking cockroaches, you know, shooting up these zombies. There's supposed to be like 40, 50 of them all coming out, you know. And at first I'm like, oh, she's gonna fucking die here. And somehow, some way, she like, the zombies are like crawling on her, and then she like gets out. And like, next thing you know, she's like still in the story later on. I'm like, the fuck?
Yeah, and then you also had, like, they had the birds coming in. They got attacked by crows for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then going through there, that's where Tyrant gets loose and makes his way back over there. And she gets, like, grabbed by Tyrant. Or I'm not sure if she gets skewered or if she gets grabbed by him. And she's like yelling at him, eat me, you piece of shit! And she had this joke earlier. Whenever they got stuck in a spot, she would say, so I guess we live here now. Mm-hmm. And... that was just this kind of on-running joke. So whenever they got stuck in a spot, and she says that because they moved around a lot when she was a kid, they always had shitty landlords. So they'd always have this thing of like, all right, well, I guess we live here now. We're stuck in this spot. Can't go nowhere. So she made a joke about that, I want to say, right before she goes off and fights. I think she says the landlord's a motherfucker or whatever and goes into fights the Tyrant. And that's where we don't see what it does to her. We don't see if it eats her, but we know she doesn't make it out.
Yeah, it just totally kills her off. Pretty much what happened now, we've killed off all the characters that are not official Resident Evil characters.
Yeah, well, I think, now thinking back on it, I mean, as far as the team goes, maybe there's like 3 or only 2 people in that whole thing that work. So you said all those other characters are just kind of fodder. They're also fodder in the games.
Yeah, the only characters that aren't real was the ones that were with Jill at the beginning, and then, I want to say just there's the 2 extra scientists with Ada. And then, yeah, the Rosie Rodriguez character. I think they just felt like they needed like one more female for some reason. But yeah, so now we're just left with Chris, Ada, Jill, Rebecca, and yeah, that's it. And then of course Tyrant comes out and the helicopter comes and everything. They're like, oh shit, look at that thing. And then there's this scene like, drop the ladder. It's like, no, give me the rocket launcher, and they toss it down. They almost have this scene where like Chris and Jill are like tossing the rocket launcher back and forth like a hot potato. Like, oh shit, here, you have it. Oh wait, you have it real quick.
Because he's more down on the ground, she's in a higher up level, and they're firing at the firing back and forth at Tyrant. And eventually they get out of there, and it's just this whole, it's kind of a very Resident Evil style or action movie ending where they all just like narrowly escape. And I thought it was interesting they don't do the 1 minute thing. They get away with like 2 minutes left. So like, oh, okay. It's not like down to the last second like these usually are.
Which is kind of nice, because sometimes like down to the last second I feel like you see that almost a little too often. It's almost kind of nice, let's just be like, let's just do it realistic instead.
And then once the place explodes, you kind of just see, you see a zombie version of Rake still raking leaves,
Yeah, I love how somehow, some way he's just up there still. Like when they said like there's a zombie version of Rake up there, I'm like, all I thought was like, was this gonna be like, was Chris gonna fucking like tie him up like in Fucking
Shaun of the
Shaun the Dead and fucking like instead of
Keep him in
playing
the back
video
shed.
keep him in the back shed so he keep raking the leaves. He has like a runner like a dog, so he just goes out raking leaves.
He's doing that. Then it just says that you see him get like explode in the blast as the fire goes everywhere, and he's like, "Well, that was my farm. I just want to get one." First off, he's like, "Make one more turn."
Was there survivors? No. There's a scientist down there. I want to make sure it dies.
I want to get a front row seat. This is a working man's town, not a thinking man's.
Yeah. You get that scientist out of here. We don't trust their kind. Scientists have brought nothing but bad omens to this village.
It's a city, but okay.
Sure.
and then it just goes into, it's very like, they're just sitting there. It's like, that was our place. Like, I was hoping it'd be our place. I was like, that was my place. I was hoping it'd be our place. And they just kind of like just give each other a look. And then they just explained that like, oh, the debris, the impact and the explosion covers over Raccoon City. There's a couple random zombies. You see, you get engulfed in flames. Cut to black.
Well, it's kind of cool because they almost do the Resident Evil 3 ending where it blows up Raccoon City, but they tie it all together with the mansion and with the city because they evacuated the city in the beginning, so they just blow up this entire fucking area. And that's where I feel like it almost kind of gives it like a very like solid ending. Like, I mean, like, yeah, you could definitely do a sequel past this, but if this was the only one, it feels like there's no hangover to it. It's just like, boom, that's it. I think that's kind of nice. It's over, explosion, boom, cut the credits. It almost has like a total 70s feel to it because of that.
Well, and if they also didn't realize what a big character Wesker was going to be, they could do some shit where they clone him and like, yeah, don't forget who you work for, bitch.
I also like how it's got the super happy ending because it's just like, it's literally Chris and like 3 other women up in this helicopter, like...
Let's all move in together.
That's like literally if you played the game and you like beat it in under an hour and fucking like, didn't use any health packs or anything like that. We were all gonna live together at the farm. With me, with Jill, the Asian one, and the little girl. It's okay, in 2 years she'll be old enough. What? In my tribe's time, I could be married and have 3 wives. Let me tell you.
Just saying. How old is Rebecca? I always thought she was just in her early 20s.
She's like 18, I think, in like the game.
Because they stop for a moment. They say like that's when they get separated from the group, and Chris and Rebecca have a moment, and he says like, "How old are you? Like too young for this shit." He's like, "Everyone's too young for this."
Yeah. Well, she's supposed to be like, she's kind of like the child prodigy type character. Like in the game, she's like pretty much like an overachiever. Like she graduates school like way early. She's kind of that person who's like super book smart, knows like, everything, but maybe not, has no real like field experience. So that's why she's dropped off. And it's just like, that's almost kind of like early days for her to be there. It's just like, hey, guess what? You want to be in the military, or you want to be in the police force. Because STARS is kind of like, the best way to say it's almost like, I feel like sort of like the SWAT team of Raccoon City. I guess that's the best way to sort of look at it. It's not really like military. It's super police force. Mm-hmm. But that's sort of like what she is. And then, it's like in the game, like, because like Rebecca's kind of like the main kind of character that Chris kind of runs into back and forth, where like Jill runs in the Barry. And of course, like Chris never sees Barry, nor Jill. No, I think Jill can actually have Rebecca in the ending, too. As I say, because like, I want to say, like, the endings you can get in the game, you can get it where, like, it's Chris, Jill, and Rebecca, or you get it where it's Jill, Chris, and Barry. Like, I almost want to say maybe Rebecca's not even in there. It's like, so it's almost to the other person, like, who's this Rebecca you keep talking about? Or who's this Barry? I never seen them.
So it's one of those things, like, well, they're just, sounds like they're just doing that thing or he was doing that thing where, because I'm assuming it was him, and he just had Peter playing the game, and maybe he's like, Peter, you're going to play number 2. Like, the game was really hard. Don't sass me, Peter. Like you will play number 2. Like, I just imagine just, like, as he's playing, just, like, silently, just, like, George looms over him watching, just, like, don't fuck up. Like, right into his ear, pulls back.
Just sitting there with his beard
behind him in the dark. You just kind of see like a light silhouette. There's like just a bit enough light just to see kind of like a silhouette of him as he leans in. Even though there's light shining on Peter, none of that light is shining on George.
He's just far enough away from the TV. There's like a slight glare off those real thick glasses he has, and that's it.
It's like, careful. looks like you might die in more ways than one. Like that. And he's like, Peter's just like sweating really badly. He's just like, bad time maybe let you know, but these doors lock from the outside. Gee, when I was told that was going to be George's intern.
I didn't think this is what I was getting into.
I didn't know he want me to just... I don't know what it is, why he wants me to play these video games. But he really wants to write the scripts. Every time I fuck up, he gets really mad.
But... yeah, it's like this one of these scripts where it's like I read this and it's like it's like a kind of example where it's like, man, I wish this just would have came out. This would have been such a fun movie because this reminds like the kind of like that one where it's like, okay, yeah, it's not like prize winning horror movie, but it's like that kind where it's like real fun and you knew you could just be like, if this movie was just as it is on the script, it'd be that kind that you could just throw on, like, you know, throw it on. It's just always a good movie. You know what I mean? Just like, cause it sounded like it would have been kind of done like sort of like horror, but with like a bit of action in it, of course. You know, I mean, it would have been definitely probably still maybe almost action first type horror movie instead of being like pure horror, but like
a lot of horror film violence, which was cool.
Yeah, because it had like whenever it describes anything, the violence in this thing's fantastic. Like, and you're always kind of afraid that like they're gonna tone it down when it's actually in a movie, but like you hear it here, it's like, oh, it would be so sweet watching like all these cool like death scenes and so on. But yeah, it's
well, also, oh, go ahead, sorry.
The one thing I was thinking though is like at this time period though, it's like I could see also people kind of going like George A. Romero. Like, I mean, like granted he made like, you know, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and so on, but like I feel like in the 90s, I mean, there was the Night of the Living Dead remake in like the very early 90s, but I'm trying to think of like what else he had kind of really big at the time. It's not like he had one of those movies where it's like, oh shit, this director, we gotta get him. It's not like it was like Stanley Kubrick or something like that. I felt like it was kind of, he was in that point where it's like, oh, there's that guy who, yeah, he did cool horror movies a long time ago and interesting.
Well, the Dead movies, I think, were just these runaway hits, and you didn't like, maybe anybody would like Night of the Living Dead or the original like Dawn of the Dead. But beyond those, I think the average film goer is like, I don't know, his films are kind of violent and kind of weird and creepy. It's probably before a lot of people, like general moviegoers, not movie buffs, but general moviegoers didn't care for like the kind of movies he was making, like Creepshow and whatnot. So you probably get like studio execs like, I don't know if his name is going to sell. And then you got people like Gen Xers kind of coming in who really kind of helped probably bring him back. Like, dude, I fucking love all those cheesy horror movies, especially his Dead movies are classics, and so it makes total sense in retrospect for him to do this. But that time though, be like, oh, I don't really know.
And it's also that thing too, is like people always forget is zombies were so unpopular around this time period. It was like, it was not cool whatsoever to be in the zombies. So that probably also made it kind of a tough sell, too. At first, they're kind of like, we know this game's doing well, but is zombies really the way to go? You could see that also making it probably hard.
Yeah, well, this is also when people were producing it, and they didn't really... I could see, like, some weird thing of Capcom being something like, look, we don't want you to make an exact copy of the game because we want it to resemble the game, but don't make an exact copy because we know what the game is. Make something different. And not saying I always agree with that, maybe depending on what it is. If this is the case, I don't think that works in its favor, but I can see somebody trying to be all like different and artsy, like, because apparently when they were making apparently, I mean, who knows how it was. He's probably not, given the controversy that popped about him recently, he's probably not gonna happen anything like this soon, but Max Landis apparently wrote a Pokemon script and they turned it down for Detective Pikachu. And the thing with that was like, well, we kind of have ideas of what someone would do with a Pokemon script. We'd rather have someone do something different, like Detective Pikachu. What are you going to do with that? That's a different oddball character. So I can see maybe something like, not that exactly, but something kind of like with Resident Evil, of just saying like, well, we don't want it being that close. We want them to give it the Hollywood treatment, and they're probably not going to do that if it's too close to the original game.
Yeah, there always is that, and I don't know where people, because so many people like too. You talk to people, and they're like, "Oh, I like when people do that." Like, I mean, like for me, it's like I'll kind of take whatever I get. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, you know, I'd rather have something than not have anything. But like this to me reminds me of like the perfect way of like, okay, it does it like really accurate to the game, yet it still is different enough all at the same time. But Yeah, it's just such a weird one too, because you just see this and it just feels like it's so weird to think that this script was just really passed on. Like, not even like considered, not like, oh, we got close to making it and then something pulled out the end. Just like, nah, let's not do it. That to me is just so odd.
I'm going to make an example here. And one of these movies isn't even out yet. And we're just going off of 2 scripts that were not made. But I'm going to just use the 3 different versions of like video game movies here. I think you get ones that try to be very close to it and very accurate. They might have to change things where they're at. But something like, say...
Dead or Alive?
Well, something like this right here, like Dead or Alive, or this, where it's just like, we're trying to follow it very closely. And you might not like that, but we're just doing whatever we can to be as close to this game as possible. And then you get something, I mean, a lot of people don't like the Mario Brothers movie, but we both like it. And they're like, well, we're going to try and take, I mean, if you could, it's easy to sit back and say, this has nothing to do with the games. But if you actually kind of look into what was available at the time, and the reason why they have the whole dinosaur theme is because, well, Mario World just came out, and that was centered around dinosaurs. So, but the more other version, the original script, which is more fantasy oriented, which we covered on the show before, that one seems more like, you know what? It's something, we're going to try and follow it as much as possible. We're going to have to make some compromises and switch some things around. We have kind of a vision. We got some placeholders here, but we ultimately think we can make something that still resembles the original game. Now, the movie that we got from Mario Brothers is kind of its own thing, but looking at that original script, it does feel like someone had a vision, but they're still trying to stay true. So, and then you got the other version, not Mario, but then the version of like, whether it looks like there was no real vision and there was no real, like, think outside the box, like, what can we do with this in the real world? Which is something they should always ask, and who knows, maybe it'll be good, but we get something like the Sonic movie. Just look at the trailer to that, like, I just don't see anybody's individual vision in that. I just see somebody like, well, I don't know, we gotta make the hedgehog look realistic, otherwise people won't believe it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably what went against this script, too, is that, like, you know what I mean? Like, as I said, I think this script kind of had, like, they looked at it and they're like, you know what, this feels like the 80s, because that's sort of like, Resident Evil was going with trying to be like a 70s, 80s type story. You know what I mean? So it kind of had that feel, and, you know, you look at Resident Evil, the movie that we got, well, that movie, though, looks cutting edge as can be, when you really think about it. Like, at that time period, that looked like 2000. Like, when you're going into the new millennia, that looked like the movie of that time. You know, I mean, in hindsight, now it looks like, oh, that's the 2000s as fuck. But, like, you could kind of see, like, take that look. Because the way I picture this movie is this movie would have, like, felt probably to, like, I guess the general audience, it would have felt dated, sort of.
Yeah, at the same time, though, I guess it's before, since it was the 2000s, early 2000s, it was, well, this was probably would have got made in the early 2000s because this was written in, I think, 97 or 98 or something.
It's 98 at the very end of the year, it says on this. So that's the only thing. I
probably before people want to do retro stuff. It was before, like, man, that's old people shit. We're in the new people shit now. So that's probably one of the reasons why. Yeah,
well, because I think that's too. It's like it would have been like right there at the 90s. Like the idea of doing something old. I mean, I guess you had Tarantino doing old stuff, but
in a real artsy kind of way. You didn't have that whole grindhouse appreciation. You didn't have like that. That was a period we had a lot of new and shiny, like, special effects type stuff.
Well, you think about even the horror movies of, like, the 90s. A lot of them are, like, the ones kind of like Scream, where it's almost like, kind of like a meta horror movie, you know what I mean? They're sort of looking at it from a completely different angle, you know, where this movie's, like, full horror. It's, like, old school horror. So at this time period, I mean, I can kind of see why they kind of turned it away. Now, I want to ask you this really quickly. Have you ever seen the commercials that George A. Romero did for Resident Evil 2?
Yeah, I watched it a couple times while looking into this, because that's what kickstarted them saying, dude, that was an awesome commercial. You know, you're the master of this shit. How about we do how would you like to do a movie script of it? Fuck yeah, I'd like to do a movie script of it. Let's get this going.
Because that's what I mean. Is like I look at that commercial. I mean, like the guy who plays like Leon or whatever is like very like, hey, what's up, guys? Like very like pretty boy. But like beyond that though, you just look at like what that is for like a low kind of budget commercial for it's one of those ones too. It's like why does Japan get the sweet fucking George A. Romero commercial when we get nothing like that? But whatever.
Well, we already put in the Biohazard 2 thing. People get confused, so we were just like, let's just keep it over here. We're not gonna redo that in there. We're not gonna move that Japanese writing off it either.
Yeah, exactly. But like you look at that and it's like I see that I'm like, dude, that's our start. That's like to me I feel like you take the script and you take that commercial, how can you not sell this? You know what I mean? Shit, you slap down a copy of Night of the Living Dead just right there be like, yo. Cuz like the thing about Night of the Living Dead too is like one of those movies like what I always love about that movie is people always kind of put it out like, oh, it's an old cheesy zombie movie, but like that movie to me is like an artistically made movie. Like that movie is so fantastic, and no matter how old it gets, it always holds up, and it's like so dialed in. Like I don't see if there's like really anything cheesy about that movie. Like I look at that movie, I'm like that is like high bar horror movies in my opinion. Like it's so well done. And then like to top it off, I like even more is the original Dawn of the Dead. But so it's just like I feel like there's all these combinations in here. It's just like it's so weird that this just didn't happen. And it just goes to show that like whoever the heck was in charge and just the time period and so on.
Don't have vision.
Cut it out dry, and it's a sad one, but
yeah, you get every so often just hear those stories, and I can see like I don't know. We've talked about this before, and I want to cover now that I'm a diehard Halo fan. But apparently the Halo script is out there. And I want to read that because I want to know why they passed on that, because they passed on that at the absolute worst time. And like, you don't realize, I mean, whether it would be good or bad, this thing would have made money. It was Halo, it had Peter Jackson's name attached to it, and you were making, Lord of the Rings just came out. So why the fuck would you turn that down? But we'll have to do, maybe I'm not going to say that's going to be our next one, but I'd like to do that one eventually.
Yeah, I'd like to do that one too, because that is that perfect example. That's like, to me, is like, that was like the biggest game and the biggest director. Shit, you could have made the worst movie ever. That movie would have made so much money. And the sad thing too is I feel like they so screwed the pooch there, because Halo, I don't think will ever be that big anymore. Halo's going to go into like the sort of the back burner section of like,
Quasi like, Crash Bandicoot?
Yeah, like that and Tomb Raider and all the ones where it's like they were big at one point and they still have their fans, you know what I mean? But they're not the number one game anymore, and they never will kind of catch back up, Because very few games have ever lasted that long that they've stayed like number one game. Like not even Resident Evil's been pretty close, but like I guess with the new Resident Evil 2 remake, it sort of kind of brought it back up there real well. But like, you know what I mean? Like most games, like they have their like console generation or so, and that's it. It's like that's why like Nintendo is one of the few. It's like they could still make a Mario and a Zelda game seem like the biggest game known to mankind, no matter how many decades later it is. But yeah, the Halo one would be definitely fun. And just like anything else, like these are always those things you say. It's like I would love to see a comic book made of this Resident Evil script. It's like one of those ones. If I just had the funding where I could just buy a boy to go out and if I get a rake out there, who's, just working the fields and happens to have this artistic ability and I can pay him some money to draw me this Resident Evil book, that'd be amazing.
Do it, boy. I just say do it. Like I'm 68 years old.
And I cut my hand off because I put it outside a window once when I was driving down the road arguing with my wife.
Flashback.
But just like there's so many things like that. Like that's where I feel like with all these kind of scripts, I just wish. I mean, downfall is like you can't like really make them because there's copyrights and all that stupid junk.
Characters, yeah.
That sad thing that kind of ruins like almost a lot of stuff. Yeah, copyrights a lot of times. Sometimes I feel that China has it right, where it's just like fuck copyrights. Whoever can make something better, go for it. You know what I mean? There's something you gotta say about that. I kind of like, I don't know, I start to seem to like that idea a little bit more. I mean, like, granted, it kind of sucks for some people, but, obviously you're not making it good enough. That's all I have to say. But I loved it. Like, it's all these scripts. I would just be like, just to make a comic book out of it, that would be the way that I feel like you would get your movie and you'd be 100% satisfied. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it wouldn't be a movie, but, like, you'd be able to see it and kind of feel it and so on. But cool stuff. We're definitely going to have to do more of that, search for more of these great video game scripts and so on, and then just see what we find. Because so far, I feel like every single one of these scripts, except for maybe the Jurassic Park one was, I guess, the weakest of them all, though I still had a lot of fun with it.
I had a lot of fun with that one. I thought that was a pretty weak script. The Justice League Mortal ones, I just liked it. I wasn't in love with it. I liked the Justice League movie we got way more than that movie, and I thought I was gonna like the script more, hearing about it, but then actually reading it, like half the characters are incapacitated for the first like half of the movie roughly. But seems like a weird way to introduce them. But still, most of these have been these have all been fun to cover.
Well, that's, I mean, as I say, it's like no matter what, they've all had really cool stuff in them, even if they're not the most perfect ones. They're still all very interesting ones. I mean, like I think Mario being like the top bar of them all. But
we started off with the best one so far.
I mean,
Mario was
this Resident Evil one's pretty close to it. I mean, like it just would have been awesome. But good stuff there. We'll put some neat links inside the description. You know, put some like maybe like Resident Evil type links in there if you want to help support the show. Put some like Amazon links in there and whatnot. But you go to oldmanorange.com for more podcasts, comics like Pizza Boys. That's Pizza Boys with a Z. Animations, all that fun stuff. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunigan.
We'll see you some other time.
Later, folks.
Thanks again for listening to the Old Man Orange podcast. Sure, check out oldmanorange.com for more podcasts, cartoons, music, animation, and a whole lot more. We also have the Old Man Orange blog going with all kinds of fun stuff. If you easily want to support the show, use one of our Amazon links either on the website or in the description of the podcast below. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show either on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Newgrounds, or anywhere else that you seem to get this podcast from. Grab the sitcom-styled comic book Pizza Boys on either Comix Central, Comixology, or Amazon. Want more podcasts? Check out the Indie Comics Club over at Comix Central. I also got a workout website called Thor's Hidden Gym, filled with fitness tips and tricks, videos, and a whole lot more fun stuff in the calisthenics world. Talk to us on Twitter at Spencer S. Holmes and Dunigan Ryan. Like our Facebook pages of Old Man Orange Productions and Pizza Boys Comic. Thanks again. We're out of here.